Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the B-side with me. Today, I got a very cool guest, my friend and fellow podcast host, Quinn.
Hello.
Hello, Quinn. We just shot a podcast for his show, the Art and Science of Controversy.
The Art of Science and Controversy. I'm so offended.
The Art of Science and Controversy. I'm sorry. Please check it out. It's a great show. It talks about all sorts of interesting controversial issues. Everything from how bugs can be used to find criminals to like Russia and war. I think it's awesome. So please check them out. Where can we find you?
Instagram and TikTok. You could find me at tasac.podcast. That's TASAC. It's actually on the shirt. I don't know if you can see that. I'm very proud of this shirt. And then on YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the works at The Art of Science and Controversy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in. Before we get into it, I just want to say a little land acknowledgement because we are on unceded territory of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. And I think it's really important to know where we're at. Mm-hmm. But before I get too deep into the questions, I want to give like a quick structure onto the episode, just how I've like written down my questions a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that Quinn does, and I would love to dig into them. This dude has an unbelievable amount of hobbies, very, very multi-talented. So I want to get into that, and then after I want to get more into like the why of it. Mm-hmm. So just starting with that, easy question to get us rolling. Mm-hmm. How have you been today?
Good. You know, I got up early. I like to brag that I get up at 5 a.m. because it makes people impressed, but I normally don't. Today is one of those fun days, though, where I did, so that made me feel productive. And, just having fun with a lot of podcasting today. How are you?
I'm doing good. This has been really fun. I haven't been asked questions on a podcast before. It was like a very different experience.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Truly. Well, you're getting that right now.
Yay!
Why the heck do you wake up at 5 a.m., Quinn?
Well, I used to wake up around 4:30 a.m. Honestly, I think it's more just a mental thing. I really love to use my morning as a relaxation period. So what I would do, I would get up really early and then just watch YouTube and eat a lot of food for the whole morning and then go to school. That sort of has grown into a more productivity-based habit. I still do spend the morning as my relaxation period, but I try now to work in a little bit of podcast editing or work on my business and stuff like that in the morning as well. Although I often do fail at making it productive. It's just such a nice time to relax.
It's crazy. I'm usually like asleep.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But I respect it. I think it's awesome. My mom does the same thing, and I just think she's a lizard. But shout out to my mom. She's great. What inspired you to start your podcast?
Oh, gosh. I'll see if I can remember. It seems like so long ago. In fact, it was. I started it in September of last year, 2021, just as school was starting back up, just out of interest. One of my friends, fellow rock climber, Jalen. I don't know if you know Jay.
I've probably seen them around, but I don't know them by name.
They have a podcast, two podcasts actually. I dare say I can't remember the name of one of them, and the other one is very hard to pronounce. You could probably just look up Jalen Bastos on Spotify and find their podcasts. Really interesting stuff. I used to listen a lot. I dare say I don't so much anymore. But they sort of got me into it and encouraged me because I'd always wanted to podcast. I thought it would be very interesting. I've always wanted to be present on the internet, providing people with information and entertainment, combining the two as best as possible. And they sort of encouraged me and inspired me, really, to start. And so I did. And then more recently, I've gotten more and more into it over the course of this recent school year. And that's just because I've been able to incorporate it into school projects and things like that. So it just helps to encourage me to do it because although there's no monetary gain, just the pleasure and then being able to use it for school projects and things as well is very nice.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't realize there were other podcasters in the Hive, though. I guess it would make sense. I guess it's a pretty like common hobby nowadays. Everyone's got a podcast.
Yeah.
Everyone and their grandma was like, I got nothing to do during COVID. Let's just talk to people. You think you can give me a quick pitch for your podcast?
Yeah. So the sort of scripted version I have written down everywhere on my social media is it's taking controversial issues and explaining the science behind them. In reality, it's much more loose than that. Some episodes will be entirely based on science. For example, the other day, I just recorded an episode about battery technology, how electric power can be stored via different mechanisms, both chemically, mechanically, potentially with gravity, and stuff like that. Other episodes will be entirely controversy-based. For example, the one that we just did, looking at drug use, drug addiction, disorders, and how those play into the world, how they can be solved. So it's really just a mishmash of science and controversy, hence the name.
Very cool. What has your experience been setting it up? Like, how did you go about choosing your gear? What has the whole like audio editing process been like for you?
Yeah.
Any hiccups?
I'm the type of person that I don't like to watch YouTube tutorials. I will just get the software if it's free, just try it out for a few days, see whether or not I like it for myself. I'm very, very bad at listening to other people and their advice, so that's what I do. That's my strategy. It works wonderfully when this stuff is free. But for things like my microphone, I did a little bit more proper research. But again, I'm very much a trial and error type of person. So I thought, I'm just going to go to Best Buy. I've heard good things about the Yeti microphone. So I got it. They have a return policy, so I tried it out, and I liked it, so I kept it. That's my strategy. It's not a very good one, but it works, and it's what I do.
Well, it clearly works. The being good or bad is just a judgment, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Do you have any big dreams for your podcast? You got any goals or like future guests you'd be really keen to interview?
That's a good question. I think my goals would be to make it into something where I don't know how to word this. That's a really good question. I don't know how to put it into words, the answer.
That's okay.
But I want something where I can make contacts with people in the scientific community so that I have those contacts to explore further in the future and talk more to people whenever I'm interested in the subject or have some use for information in the subject. And yeah, just making contacts, getting to know people, and then also taking those contacts and being able to educate other people by sharing those contacts and their opinions with the world. So I pretty much never speak on my own podcast. I just play dumb and ask the questions and lead the guest on. But I interview, for example, doctors, not necessarily of medicine, but doctorates. So, for example, Dr. Paget, who I interviewed a few weeks ago about the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And just taking those contacts, building them, sharing their opinions and the information they have with the world. And that's sort of the goal with the podcast. Obviously, money would be nice.
Money would be nice.
I think that's everyone's goal, is to make a little on the side. That never hurts. A little bit of something for all the time put into editing and recording. But definitely the contacts and the clearly I'm not very well educated. Educating of people is the primary goals.
No, I think your mouth and your brain are just desynchronized at this point in time. It's a bit disorienting to be like listening to your own voice and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you're free to ask me questions. This isn't a one-way street.
Thank you.
Just saying. Do you have any dream guests? Is there anyone you'd be like super keen to interview?
I know the very cliche answer is Elon Musk. Unfortunately, I'm going to go that dreaded route and say Elon Musk.
The elongated muskrat himself.
Yes, it's been said so many times before by so many other people. But I really want to know more about not his scientific backgrounds or SpaceX or anything like that. I just want to know how he looks at business more. Because he's the type of person, he founds a business, gets it successful, and then he's out. He moves on to the next idea. He's not in it for the money. The money is, I think, secondary to him. I think he's in it for the idea. Once he's made the idea, then he will sell the company and move on to the next idea. Take the money that he got from that previous company and the idea it was associated with, and put it into that next idea. And I think that is incredible. And frankly, I think I would get too sentimental if I had companies like those get sentimental with the companies, not be able to sell them and move on to the next idea. I think that's what's contributed to his success, and I want to learn more about that.
Interesting. I think that's a great way to look at it. Because a lot of people want to talk to him about science and stuff, but he's been a very successful businessman. Very much so. You did kind of reroute my questions, but I think this is really interesting. I know you have your own business that you're doing.
Yes.
That's an iffy yes. So I'm curious, how's that been going for you? And I'm also extremely curious as to what you've learned and like how interacting with people through it has been.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of a timing issue. The holidays, for example, as for how it's going, wonderful. Like I had this one weekend, I sold $2,000 worth of product in about 2 or 3 days.
Really?
Via a pop-up and a retailer, stuff like that. So since the holidays, I have not sold a single product.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very timing based, but it's for anyone who may not know me, which I'm assuming is all of you. The business, it's called West Coast Soapworks. It's developed for people with skin conditions like rock climbers. And as an example, I'm a rock climber and I'm in the rock climbing community. I work at a rock climbing gym. So I developed this skincare to solve the issues that rock climbers face, especially since I have eczema as well. So that is not a good combination. I have a lot of skin issues on my hands primarily, and so I developed products to help solve that for people. And that's the company. And then the issue is, of course, getting it into retailers, getting it into people's hands that want to be able to use it, and getting people to know about it, that it is a natural, organic, handmade option for people with skin issues. If other things aren't working, that they could try my product, and just getting the information out there is the hard part.
Yeah, well, for people who are wondering, how can we find your product? How do we get some high quality West Coast Soapworks in our hands?
Yeah, so you could just look me up just on the website, which is westcoastsoapworks.com. You could also go to the Instagram account, which is westcoast.soapworks. And you can see all the information there. Also, the website link is on the Instagram account, so you could learn through the bio. And I have an about page on the website itself, so you can learn more about the product and about myself and what the goals are there. But yeah, just helping people, pretty much.
Very cool. What have you learned about soap? I'd imagine it's not one of those things you can just be like, I'm going to buy 3 ingredients, throw them together, and sell them. You got to do some trial and error. You got to research in it a little bit.
It's really funny because it has nothing to do with soap. I haven't developed a single soap product.
Hand creams.
Well, as for why I called it West Coast Soapworks, I owned a soap company when I was 9 is when I founded it.
So you've been in this for a hot minute.
Sorry?
You've been in this for a while.
Yeah. Well, I started when I was 9. I had to abandon it when I was 10 because my parents moved. I'm originally from New York. I grew up there. When I turned 10, around that time, we went for, a bit of a voyage, lived in Turkey for a while, France, moved around the place, all over the place, and then eventually moved here, Vancouver. So that was a soap company. I wanted to refound that here, but I thought, you know what, skincare is better. It's more marketable. It makes more sense. It's an issue that I have experience with. I can put that experience in. I can test the product on myself, make sure it's good, and then get it to people who want it and need it. And so I decided to go with skincare instead, but I kept the name West Coast Soapworks just because I thought it's a nice name, and it's not taken, so I think I'll take it. Inspired by my previous ventures.
Nice.
Sorry, what was the original question?
That's more than okay. No need to apologize, Quinn. Or my question was, what have you learned about making hand creams?
Yes. Oh my goodness, I get sidetracked easily.
Me too, don't worry about it.
I've never been on this side. Normally I just play dumb and ask a question, and I don't have to be the one elaborating. So what I've learned, again, it goes back to my personality. I'm very much trial and error based. Being that way and being a little bit of a perfectionist, I could just get stuck on a single product for a very long time. And you might think that over time I'd get better and better at developing products. Ironically, the 8th product I developed, the 8th one out of 20-something, I think 24, 25 now, the 8th one is my favorite. It's the best. It's the best selling. That was one of the first things I developed. That's when I was originally just saying, you know what, I'm just going to throw coconut oil in there. I'm going to throw some sweet almond oil in there and see what the hell happens. That's the stage I was at when I developed this product. My best selling and my favorite product. So, going back to the idea, you'd think I would get better? No. I've gotten more consistent at developing decent products, developing good products, and weeding out the ones that are quote-unquote okay, but not good enough. But the best isn't necessarily when you would expect it to come. I think that's an interesting lesson. I'm not sure how it applies to the rest of life, but it's interesting to look at. And then, of course, making business contacts, speaking with people, talking to retailers, it's a really good experience. And although I've not made much money, although I've not met many people, and although I've not gone very far with it yet, just the experiences themselves are incredible life lessons, very valuable. And so if you have any hobby at all or any ideas that you want to turn into a business, I would highly recommend it, because the experiences you'll gain, what with talking to people, marketing yourself, and developing social skills, let alone time management and business management, very good skills. I would highly recommend it.
Very cool. How has other people's help been important in that process?
I think for almost all businesses, the help is secondary to the motivation and the desire to get an outcome. So, for example, help is tremendously useful. But if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. It's just like luck. Luck will help speed you in your process to the outcome you're looking for. But most of the time, if you dedicate yourself to a task, you'll be able to get that outcome, even if you have bad luck. And just taking those problems that bad luck gives you, solving them, and in some cases being able to use them as inspiration or turn them into a solution for something else. I think that is what defines a good businessman, or woman, of course. Someone that can take a problem and turn it into a solution for another problem, and keep that chain carrying on. I think that's how truly great ideas are gotten into the world. Solving problems.
Very cool. I'd love to dig into that more in a little bit, but before we do, I would love to talk more about hobbies. I know you're a climbing enthusiast as you work at the gym. How long have you been climbing for, Quinn?
Oh my goodness, almost 10 years now. I started when I was 9. I'm currently, I guess, 18 and a half, you could say.
So a very long time.
Yes.
Very cool. Do you train outside of climbing? Like, do you just climb for fun? Are you training?
I don't train at all. In fact, I find training absolutely horrendously boring. Like weightlifting, for example. I used to do a little bit in body weight exercises as well. I hate it. It's the most boring, repetitive thing I think I've ever done. No offense to anyone that can enjoy that. I respect that, actually. But I think climbing is a much more interesting challenge. It's not just physical, it's mental as well. And it's also a puzzle. You have to look at the problem. You have to know what it would be like to do without doing it so that you can predict what it would feel like. You have to create a plan. You have to be able to implement parts of that plan on the wall, but be adaptable, because there's no way in hell that plan is going to work out the way you expect. You're going to need to modify it a lot, and maybe just throw it out from the very first hole that you touch on the wall. And so that makes it much more interesting. It's much more of a puzzle, and it's much more mental as well.
Are there any goals for climbing you're trying to work on?
I used to want to be competitive. I think I've given up on that. There's a certain amount of time after which you're allowed to give up on your dreams, and a certain amount of work put into a dream without making any progress would justify giving it up. Not necessarily sitting on it for 10 years and then saying, I'm going to give this up, even though you haven't put any work into it. But after a certain amount of work, I think you can safely say that something isn't going to happen and you should move on.
That's a great quote, actually. I like that.
Thank you.
No, seriously. I think it's such a fascinating sport. And looking at climbing as a whole, I'm curious what you enjoy about it, just because there's so many aspects to it, like as you mentioned, the puzzle solving, the physicality of it, but also like the community and the people and the adventures you get from it. Do you get to go outside, and what do you enjoy from it?
I've gone outside exactly 4 times in my 9 years of climbing. So no, I don't. I don't do outdoor bouldering or outdoor sport climbing. I don't do any lead climbing. I just do bouldering indoors, pretty much only at the Hive. I've only climbed at Hive. I've climbed at Hive Vancouver since I think about 2016, 2017 when I moved to Vancouver. I've not even gone to most of the other Hive locations more than 2 or 3 times. I've gone outdoors very little. So it's not so much about exploring or meeting people. The reason I don't go climbing outdoors is I have no one to go with. It's more about making temporary conversation. I'm not interested in making friends, but just conversing with people about a common problem. This bouldering wall in this gym. How they might solve it versus how I might solve it. Taking different strategies, analyzing them, seeing the strengths and weaknesses of each strategy, and then deciding on the plan. Trying that plan, maybe it's wonderful, maybe it's absolutely terrible. You go back, and then you re-strategize with them. And I think that's why I'm interested in not so much long-term connections, but just getting to know the community on a short-term basis, looking at problems, finding commonalities in it, creating a plan, executing the plan, and then taking away the lessons for next time.
Okay, that's interesting. How has your experience working? Because as I understand it, you're what we call the Hive a customer service representative.
I was.
Oh, what are you doing now?
I still sometimes do, but I work mostly as an instructor.
Oh, that's so cool. No way.
It's very nice.
I didn't realize that. Damn, well, now I have even more questions.
Yeah, I only make an additional $1.35 an hour, so it's decent, but not as much as you'd think.
Honestly, criminal. I don't know. It's so valuable to have good instructors.
At Hive, or not Hive, at the Richmond Oval, I saw a post on Indeed a couple of weeks ago, $21 per hour for instructing.
Yeah. But besides the point, I love you, Hive.
Yeah, we love you. More money, please, though. I would like it. Not necessary, but it would be nice.
Money me, please. But,
yes, money me.
Damn. Okay, teaching is awesome. I think teaching is so cool. I was going to say, how has your time working at the front desk impacted your enjoyment of climbing? Because I know for me, it kind of like neutered it in a way.
Absolutely. It makes climbing a chore. It's something that you do either before your shift or after your shift. You're all tired, or you know you're about to be tired. You're down. You just do it for the exercise and to maybe forget that you're going to be working in this same gym and trading your time for money. So working as a customer service representative in the gym that you climb at is not ideal in the long term. In the short term, it's great. It lets you meet new people. You get familiar with faces. You can converse more easily about a problem when you're on the mats. But in the long term, especially if you're working more than about 4 days a week, it just becomes pretty awful. And the only time you ever rock climb is after, before a shift.
Yeah, that's fair. So being more on the education side of it now, I'm curious as to what reward you've gotten from teaching people. I think teaching people is super positive experience. You learn things about yourself. You learn things about climbing. And it's very motivating to like be with people who are learning. So how's that experience been for you?
It's pretty nice, actually. This is funny. I talked on Thursday with my science teacher about battery technology, as I think I said in the introduction here. And one of the ways we started the episode off is we talked about teaching. And we compared her teaching to teaching in high school grade 12 to my teaching of rock climbing and the commonalities between them. And I think it's really nice. We both agree. I think almost anyone would agree. Teaching is wonderful because it gives you a new perspective on the problems that you're faced with. So maybe it's a new way to tackle a buffer solution in chemistry, a new way to look at the dilution of the buffers and see how the acidity will react based on the moles of something added to a solution. A new formula that you hadn't considered. Or maybe it's a completely different way of doing a rock climb that you would think, that will definitely not work. And maybe it does work, maybe it doesn't. Either way, it's interesting to see how people tackle that problem. And so I really love not necessarily only to teach beginners, but even just to watch them climbing in the gym. You could see a whole bunch of interesting things, and you could see their thought process as they get on the wall. Whether they've planned the climb or not, you can see them thinking. And it really is quite interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely find that with beginners, you can tell if people have a plan or not.
Yeah.
If people have put like 2 minutes of thought, like I'm gonna do this, and they do it, they look a lot better than like
And seeing
what
how
am I
they
doing?
seeing how they adapt as well if that plan goes to crap.
Totally. The other thing which I love that you mentioned is just like watching them climb. It's like very refreshing because as people who have been climbing for a long time, we have like such a like I guess a wide base of experience doing the same moves over and over again. It gets very like mechanical almost. You're like, oh, I see this position. I know I'm gonna do a drop knee, or I know I'm gonna flag, and watching someone just like do something completely different on it, it's like, oh, that could work.
Yeah, and then even seeing people in the training room when I'm just trying to show them the positions in isolation for example, a back flag. It's really interesting how much people struggle and how much precursive material they need in order to do a back flag. And that's something that you just forget about.
Yeah, totally. It's like, oh, I remember when I couldn't do this at all, but like it's been 4 years of me doing it like a couple times a week, and now it's so natural, you know.
And now I get pissed at myself if I can't do it perfectly. And then these people are what I used to be like.
Totally. Well, it's a bit of the perfectionist in you, right?
Yeah.
Fair. But I guess other than climbing, you've got a lot of other hobbies. I'm curious about your watch tinkering.
Yes.
What the heck got you into that? And what do you actually do?
Yeah. This guy on my wrist got me into it. This is my grandfather's watch. It's electric. It's built in China. Very cheap. It doesn't work. Completely broken. But I've always loved it. I've always wanted to see what's inside of it, even though it is electrical. And I've always thought that watchmakers were so mysterious, and that their craft was so interesting, and so delicate, so many parts, so much to predict. Seeing the movement of the mechanism in your mind and planning out what part should go where. And I found that fascinating. So I stumbled on a YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. It's called Wristwatch Revival on YouTube. There are a whole bunch of other great YouTube channels as well devoted to watchmaking. And I just binged watched his videos. Each video is 40 minutes to an hour long. So very time consuming to binge watch. But I found it fascinating. And so I decided, you know what? I think I'd like to get into this. So I went on eBay and bought some old watches. Really cheap, actually, just broken. You can just search wristwatch for repair or pocket watch for repair. If you're wanting to start, I'd recommend starting on a pocket watch. Since it is larger, it's easier to see everything. Either way, that's what I did. And I got some screwdrivers, and I just took them apart and put them back together. And they worked. And so I thought, you know what, I want to do a little bit more of this. I got some oilers. I bought some cheap watchmaking oil. And I've just been working on watches, taking them apart. Oftentimes there's a component I don't know where to find that's broken, so I'll just leave it apart on my desk until I do hopefully stumble across it. I currently have 3 watches that are taken apart on my desk. I need to find components for, but yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Very cool. It seems like an interesting hobby, just like the minuteness of it.
Yeah.
Very very tedious. Do you enjoy that kind of thing though? Like just the precision. What is it about it that you enjoy?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think looking at the mechanism together, comparing it to when it's apart, you look at when it's all together, it looks so intimidating. It's so tightly packed, so many pieces. You take it apart, you take out every single screw, every single gear, absolutely everything into its constituent parts, and you think, that's not as much as I thought it would be.
Huh.
And it's really nice to see that. And then taking it apart is one thing. Putting it back together is a completely different thing. Taking it apart is very fun. It's actually quite relaxing. There's not much you need to worry about. The thing is quite dirty, so you don't even need to put gloves on. But then you clean it. You put it through isopropyl alcohol baths and paint thinner baths to get off any gunky old oil or any dirt. And then you have to put on your gloves and take great care not to get any of the pieces dirty as you try to get these tiny pivots on these gears into these tiny holes on the jewels. And you need to remember where each piece goes. And you can photograph the thing as you take it apart to remember where everything goes, but there are so many pieces in the way, you won't be able to see everything. You're going to end up thinking, oh, crap, I have 2 gears. They look practically identical. I can't tell which is which in this image. I need to know which one goes where, and it matters. It matters a lot. You can't swap them, even though they look identical. So you just have to fiddle around with it. See which jewel fits which pivot. See which way the things will turn when you push the barrel, which is a part of the watch, goes into the train of wheels, which is a whole bunch of wheels, which turns torque from the mainspring into speed for the balance and the escapement, which is what keeps time. So you look at all these wheels, which one goes where? When I turn the barrel and have all these wheels twisting around, are they catching on each other? Are all the jewels properly lined up with the pivots of these wheels? Is everything where it needs to be? Is there anything gunking it up, slowing it down? Is anything hitting the side of the casing, anything like that? So it is very particular. Taking apart, very easy. Highly recommend. Putting it back together can be absolutely painstaking. But it is so rewarding to put it back together. You put the balance in, the last part. You put it in, and all by itself, it just starts oscillating back and forth a couple of times per second, 2 to 3 times per second. And that is so satisfying to see. One of the most satisfying things by far.
Huh.
You screw it back in, put it all back together, put the hands on, make sure they aren't catching on each other, and voila, you've fixed a watch.
That must be a crazy satisfaction.
It is.
Would you compare it to like doing a climb you've been working on a long time?
That's a good question, actually. I like that comparison. I don't think so. With watchmaking, it's easy to get bored. With climbing, you have a whole problem. You can work your way up to the crux of the issue, the part that you keep falling on, and at the very least, you could do that part interestingly each time. Maybe you get very comfortable with that, the beginning part, and you have a lot of time to think about the difficult part of the problem, and you can start having fun with the bottom of it. With watchmaking, you get to a certain part, and then you think, crap, I'm going to be here for the next 2 hours trying to line these 3 pivots up with these 3 holes that they need to line up with. And then those pivots will have 3 holes on the top it needs to line up with, 3 holes on the bottom. They're all separate gears. It's impossible to make them fit. And then you just need to fiddle around with them. If you try and screw things together too early, you're just going to snap the pivots and need to order new parts, do the whole thing all over again. So it's very tedious just because you do the same exact... It would be like being in rock climbing, doing the exact same move over and over and over and over without being able to do the material before it. But also with watchmaking, you don't have the satisfaction of alleviating stress by exercising. It's just absolute boredom while you try to get those pivots back together. The rest is amazing, but there are a few parts of watchmaking that are absolutely infuriating. And then as well, like for example, with the yoke spring or the mainspring, if you're trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, each time you do it, of the dozens of times you try, there's the potential for that spring to just fly to the other side of the room and self-destruct. And then voila, you either need to dig through your carpet and try to find this tiny component that looks like a speck of dust, or order a completely new one and wait for a month for it to ship. So
I think that just makes the satisfaction when it actually works all that much better.
So much better.
Because if it was easy, you wouldn't be satisfying at the end, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, that seems interesting. I've never really thought about doing it as a hobby, but now I'm just thinking of all the old watches I have that don't work, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Ooh. But
it's very fun, though. I would highly recommend at least taking it apart. The taking apart is the easy part. Highly recommend it. Very fun.
Interesting. Well, I'll keep that in mind. That's a other avenue to explore for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few other things that you do I wanted to touch on a little bit. I know you play the piano.
Yes.
Are you self-taught? Do you have a piano teacher?
I have a piano teacher, yes. And it's interesting. I originally got into piano because I wanted to learn violin. I have my great-grandfather was a luthier. He built like 80-something violins, a few cellos, and a couple of double basses. I have 3 or 4 of his violins.
Wow.
Only one of them is strung and actually works. The others I want to have repaired. But I've always wanted to play it because my father and my grandfather didn't play. They've just been sitting around for literally decades. So I wanted to learn violin. But I thought, you know what, that is supposedly the hardest instrument in the world to learn. So I might start off with something a little bit more easy. I remembered I had a very old cheap electronic keyboard that my parents tried to make me learn when I was 5. I cried and whined when I was 5, and thankfully, because I absolutely hated it, so they quit instructing me. I only had a teacher for about a month, so I'm starting from scratch, essentially. I take this old electric keyboard from my basement, start fiddling around with it, and I'm listening to classical music by this point, which is what got me into this. I'd always wanted to learn the violin, stumbled on classical music, and that's what drove me to actually pursue this. And so my parents saw me fiddling around on this old electric keyboard and said, you know what, we'll let you take piano lessons again and see how it goes. So now I've been taking them for about 1 year and 3/4. I started on August 17th of 2020, and I've been progressing since then. Violin I started around the same time, a little bit later. I dare say I'm not quite as passionate about it, but I'm trying to reinvigorate myself for it.
That's crazy. I didn't realize you'd only been doing it for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive, Quinn.
Thank you.
I imagine you spent quite a bit of time doing it then.
Yeah. Sometimes, I've only done this about twice, but sometimes I'll just get completely carried away and play for literally 10 or 11 hours in a single day on the weekend.
Really?
Yeah. More normal is I used to do just about every weekend about 4 hours, 5 hours. More recently, I've only been doing about an hour, but I think that's still
It's a lot
okay.
of time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I used to play piano, I'd do like an hour a week.
Fair enough.
I was the kid that whined.
Yeah, that's me with violin. Not the whining part, but just the lack of motivation.
Fair enough.
Starting to, yeah. Violin, the interesting difference between the two instruments that I've noticed. Piano, very tangible. You know right away what you're doing wrong. You can say, okay, I need to speed up. I need to hit this key a little bit softer so it's quieter and improve my dynamics. I need to get my rhythm better. With violin, it's much less tangible. It's more, I have this weird thing that I'm rubbing along a string and it's making noise. I sort of know how I'm controlling that, but I don't know how to improve. I don't know how to take this thing and make a noise that sounds nice, with deep, rich qualities. Whereas piano, that's what you have by default. You just hit a key and you get a nice note. And then piano as well, you can literally see where each note is. Violin, you have to learn by muscle memory over years and years and years. So it's a lot less tangible, and I think that's why many people find it difficult to learn, and why I have for the most part, lost motivation with the violin. Is just it seems like the only thing you can do is put in more and more and more time and hope that you get better. That it almost seems like there's no actual strategy to improve, even though I know that there actually is. But, yeah, difficulty is in pursuing that and maintaining motivation.
I mean, violin is a ridiculous instrument. It's tiny, so the notes are close together, and then you have to muscle memory every single position within like a few like hundredths of centimeters to get the notes right. Otherwise, you're playing like a G half flat or something, you know?
Yeah. I actually, I took up cello for a little while. I was borrowing a friend's instrument and they needed it back, which is why I quit. I would like to continue in the future, but I found it much more easy to get that right note, and actually easier as well to get a good sound quality that sounds nice and deep and rich. So I think cello might be a nice starting point if you want to play a stringed instrument, although violin is great as well.
It's
just
beautiful.
need to maintain motivation.
Yeah, very difficult. Violin was one of the first instruments I tried to learn to play, and I just could not. So I'm like, so next.
Yeah, fair enough.
Next. As far as music goes, funny enough, my podcast name is music themed, and I never talk about music basically, because the B-side of a record.
Oh, that's interesting.
But that's besides the point. I'm curious what music you like. I know you mentioned getting into classical music. Are you a classical buff, or do you listen to a bit of everything?
Oh, I used to listen to pop music. It's funny, I've noticed that when I listen to pop music is the quote-unquote darkest times of my years. I'll go through cycles sometimes of just absolutely out of it. And yeah, developing bad habits, like self-harm. And then I'll come out of those cycles. When I listen to pop music and modern music, overlaps with when I have those dark times. When I listen to classical music, it helps pull me out. It's very funny.
Huh. That's interesting. But I get that. Music is very emotional, so it can tie into that. Do you have any favorite albums or classical pieces?
Oh, I absolutely love Chopin Piano Concerto. I think it's number 1 or number 2 in E, I think, minor. Oh my goodness, I sound like I don't know it at all, and frankly, I really don't. But it's absolutely beautiful. The first movement, I think, is one of my favorite pieces. As far as favorite composers go, I'd have to say Rachmaninoff is amazing. The harmonies and melodies that he comes up with. I'm currently working on a Rachmaninoff piece, his Prelude Opus 32, number 10 in B minor. Very fun. A bit difficult, but very nice piece.
It sounds difficult. Very, very cool. I don't even know if I've heard of that composer before.
Rachmaninoff. Russian guy. Rachmaninoff or Rachmaninoff.
Rachmaninoff.
It's Russian. I say Rachmaninoff normally. I think it's supposed to be Rachmaninoff.
I can't roll my R's. I'm a French person, so I roll them with the back of my throat.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, wonderful composer. Died in, I think, like 1944.
Oh, so more recent.
Yeah, a late romantic era / I guess very early cinematic era composer.
Well, that's crazy. I'll have to check it out. I'm always keen to find new music. I guess as far as classical goes, do you have any favorite other albums? Do you listen to any other genres, or are you pretty dedicated to your bag? You know?
Yeah, I mostly listen to piano compositions and concertos. I don't listen to as many violin solos anymore. I used to a lot. I'd like to more. They are quite nice. But yeah, as far as other genres goes, I pretty much just listen to late romantic era. That's my favorite. With a little bit of classical, not much classical. And then a nice sprinkling of Baroque as well, mainly Bach.
Crazy. I love Bach. Bach is great.
Yeah.
He's got great conversation in his music.
Yeah.
Like the tension and the resolution, I think he does that really well.
Incredible. And the music theory as well.
It's very cool. Big shout out to Bach if you're watching this now. The other thing I was quite curious about is drawing. I know you've tried your hand at drawing.
Yes.
Is that a bit more of like a pastime, just another thing to do, or what's your relationship with art?
It used to be. I don't anymore. I still can, but it just takes so much time. And I'm willing to put in the patience and the time. But frankly, I'd prefer to do other things such as the podcast or schoolwork or just laze around on YouTube. But yeah, I used to do quite a lot of artwork, mainly graphite sketches. I used to do a lot of hyper-realistic, well, quote-unquote hyper-realistic. I tried to do a lot of realistic. I've more recently graduated to abstract pieces, just because they're so fast and frankly easy. I don't want to use the word easy, but much more doable than something hyper-realistic. And you can just let the pencil flow on the paper with an abstract and just make it up as you go. And I really like that. You can just make a weird shape and then turn it into something beautiful. Whereas with realistic, you just have all of this structure that you need to worry about the entire time. But yeah, I don't really do either of them anymore.
Fair enough. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it takes time.
It
some
does.
of the things I used to do for the realistic side would take like 12 or 13 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So not hyper-realistic, I shouldn't use that, but realistic, I guess.
Aiming for realism.
Yeah.
No,
I think I did okay.
I get that. I think it's very cool. I love the artistic pursuit. I think it's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, I think podcasts are art in a way.
Yeah, I suppose they are.
I think they are. I mean, that's why I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an art form, but yeah, I don't know. I want to try drawing. I want to do it some more. I used to try to learn, and then I'd stop because it'd be like, oh my god, I spent like 10 hours drawing nothing.
I think absolutely anyone can draw as long as they can look at the image that they're drawing and realize skills along the way that they need to pick up and improve as they draw that particular image. And then also patience is the biggest thing by far. Just being willing to dedicate hours and hours to something and trying your best to make it good.
Yeah, you have to want to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, before we move on to other things, I got this recommendation for a question, so I figured I'd ask it. Shout out to Reiner, who asked me to ask you this. Do you know what the akathisia mechanism is?
Akathisia?
Something like that.
I can't say I've heard of it, no.
Fair enough. It's some weird timepiece found on like an ancient Greek ship that's like a 3,000-year-old watch.
I think I recognize this now, yeah, from the story.
It's crazy. I probably butchered the pronunciation, but actually I didn't probably, but I did. That being said, I think it's really cool, and I was just wondering if you knew about it. What do you think about it?
I remember seeing some videos about this a few years ago. I don't want to make any predictions or anything because, of course, I know next to nothing about it. I didn't even recognize the name. But certainly worth exploring, although the practicality of exploring it is questionable. I think, no offense to historians or anything like that, but I'm the type of person that wants to see application of science, not only understanding what we used to know about it or how we used to apply it or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. I think people get excited about it for the whole idea, like, oh, these people were primitive, they didn't know anything, but then here's this like immaculately machined functioning timepiece, and people are like, what the heck, you're not supposed to have that.
Who is this person that asked you to ask me this? Because I feel very popular now.
It's my friend, my friend Reiner. He's the guy that helped me set up this, basically.
Oh, nice.
Very helpful. Yeah, shout out. I always thank him at the end of these episodes because like I would not be here if it wasn't for him. Mm-hmm. That being said, I would love to move on to more motivation style questions.
Oh boy.
I'm always interested to know how people got to where they are and what drives them to do the things they do. So I'm just going to say it. What drives you to be busy all the time? You got so much stuff going on, Quinn. Why?
Honestly, I think just boredom. It's weird to say, but if I'm the type of person, I love to binge watch stuff unhealthily. I tell myself, okay, 2 more episodes of this YouTube thing. I don't watch full movies because I think, oh, there's no way I'm going to be sitting here for that long. So I just watch clips on YouTube, or I just watch short videos, stuff like that, that's 5 minutes long. I say, okay, I'll finish this one and then I'll do something productive. And then I spend days doing that. But eventually I do get bored, thank God. And when that happens is when I kick into productivity mode and I say, okay, I'm going to die soon. My death is going to be sooner than I ever expect. It's been 18 years. I've achieved nothing. Absolutely nothing. I have $15,000 in my bank account. After 18 years, what do I expect to do with my life? At this rate, I'm going to be dead before I know it. And so I use that as my motivation to finally, after days, get up and do something. Whether that is working on the business or founding a business, or working on the podcast or founding a podcast, or just practicing piano. At least it's something productive that's working towards self-improvement, developing a skill that could be used to make money, which could be used to fund the development of other skills and other projects in the future. So frankly, I think it all boils down to boredom and the knowledge that it's been 18 years in the blink of an eye. In 2 more blinks, I'll be dead.
That's scary, but not wrong. Aversion to boredom is very fair, but I feel like a lot of people are fine with things being normal. Do you feel like very uneased about doing nothing?
Yeah. The thought of continuing with that laziness throughout my life, that is the possible version of myself that I hate the most and want desperately to avoid happening. And so that is why I do these things, to try and change that possibility of becoming a lazy couch potato that achieves nothing, is not notable, has nothing to speak for. And the thing that I hate the most about that thought is knowing that in 2 more blinks of the eye I'll be dead and doing nothing about it.
Maybe like 3 or 4. You get probably 80, 90.
Yeah,
life expectancy is getting higher.
Even if I live to 200 years old, I'll be 199 before the time I know it. It's been 18 years, and how many I don't even remember more than a couple years worth of material. I mean, we only remember the interesting parts of our life, yes?
Yeah, and particularly the negative ones.
Yeah, particularly the negative parts. So, I mean, if you only remember a small fraction of your life, and all of that just seems like a dream anyway because it's in your past, then what's the point in all of that time of having existed anyway? We might as well just be being reborn every day, and just all of our previous life is essentially worthless. It's just a foggy collection of memories that's growing foggier with every single day, and only a handful of memories. So, yeah, if I snap my fingers, just like that, we're all dead. Because by the time we get to 200 years old, let's say we live that long, it won't feel like it. We'll look back, we'll have a couple of memories, a memory of our teenagehood, a memory from our, I don't know, something crazy happened on our 50th birthday, something like that. We'll have a handful of memories. It'll just feel like a dream. It'll feel like we're just instantly 200 years old and dead.
I mean, all we ever have is this moment in time.
Exactly. And so the past is negligible. You can take what you can to learn from it, but you might as well consider it as non-existent. And so if you consider the past non-existent, there's no use in saying the future is existent. You might as well just say, okay, I'll be dead like that. And that's exactly what it feels like. You'll be in your deathbed before you know it.
So you're bringing death closer to you to kind of give you a kick in the ass.
Yeah, essentially.
That's not a bad strategy, frankly.
It's pretty depressing, though. But
a little bit.
It works sometimes.
Well, I mean, life isn't nice, frankly.
No, life is not nice.
Life is not nice. So it's good to be realistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting view. I haven't heard many people word it like that, but I get where you're coming from for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you've grown through these sorts of things? I know you've mentioned periods of pop music where life has been more gray, and I feel like you don't have to get into that, of course, but having things to do is very empowering. Like, it very much helps being active, doing things to occupy the mind. How have you grown through that?
Yeah, so I don't know that I have. Could you say the question again?
How have you grown through doing things? Like, you said it's like it's self-improvement to like play the piano or to like work on a business, get these new experiences. Like, how has it affected you personally?
Yes, being able to look back and say, I've developed this new skill and I've honed it and I'm almost happy with where I am at with it is very nice to be able to do, and see the development and think about all of the new ways that you could apply that skill, whether monetarily or for enjoyment purposes. Although I don't think it is healthy to be happy necessarily with a skill, otherwise you'll stop improving it and then it'll degrade. So I think there's a good balance to be found in there, and I think that's one of the things I've learned over this time with different hobbies is don't be happy with what you have. Always strive for more, but ideally, don't be overly unhappy. Otherwise, you'll just weigh yourself down. Fair.
You want I guess there's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find balance though. Moderation is the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm always curious as to how people got to where they are, and I think that how we were as kids. I'm a big fan of the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question I always ask people is, what were you like as a kid? How was your temperament, like your personality in a way, like how you interact with people, your introversion, your extroversion, how sensitive you are? How has that changed over your life?
Yeah, this is actually something I've wondered quite a lot myself, because going to that idea of forgetting all of your memories, I don't know. From what I hear from my parents, I was relatively quiet. For example, well, and then I didn't really like toys as well. So an example of that is like Thomas the Train Engine set. My sister would play with a bunch. She's 3 years older than me. I just didn't touch it. In fact, I found it scary. I remember that. I remember looking at it in horror. That's one of the very few memories I have from my childhood, is looking at this Thomas the Train Engine set in horror. So I wasn't a very big game person. I was quiet. I hated social events. So, for example, my parents signed me up for karate. I would kick and scream and cry, literally cry, on the way to the karate dojo. And then with summer camps, I would plead my parents not to sign me up. And I think they would consider me quiet. As far as things I would do go, instead of playing with games or things, my favorite thing ever, absolute favorite thing to do, is take the hose from outside in the garden, and there would be no cap on the hose, so it'd just be coming out almost laminar. I would put it on a plane of glass, vertical plane of glass, like a window, and just watch the water run down it. I remember my parents telling me that they thought I had gone catatonic because I would just stay there, apparently for hours, staring at the water as it flowed down the window. So I'm sure the water bill was awful, but that's okay.
It was fun. It was worth it.
It was amazing.
Very cool. And that's interesting. So from being a very like introverted kid who was kind of like out of the idea of social interaction and playing, how have you changed? Like, at least from my perception of you, which is quite limited, you're quite an outgoing person.
Yeah.
Like you're going even out of your way to find people and talk to them and put it publicly. So how has that changed for you?
I think I go out of my way to talk to people only when there is something in it for me, frankly. Like the podcast, doing the podcast. And then instructing rock climbing as well. I can get some joy out of it because there's a commonality, rock climbing, that we're talking about and strategizing about. Socializing in general, I can do it for a little while, mostly as a courtesy, but overall I like to avoid it. That's why, for example, with people at the Hive, as I said earlier, I don't form friendships. I just talk to people for a little while, and I try not to let those friendships bleed outside of the Hive. Same with school. I'll have friendships in class. I don't socialize outside of class. I've done that before, and it went badly. We all got drunk, and things went not good. And so since then, I've just, nope, I'm not forming deep friendships. Or at least not that letting them spill out of whatever circle that is from. And so, like, my best friend, as an example, is a guy I climb with at the Hive, and we just walk to the SkyTrain together, and then we don't speak for the next week until we only climb Mondays. That's it. I see him once a week, and that's my best friend.
Huh.
So yeah, I can socialize, and I enjoy it for short periods of time, and I enjoy quality conversations, talking about ideas, not, for example, other people. But, yeah, I don't like to linger with people.
Fair enough. People are weird.
People are weird.
People are really weird, Quinn. People are very weird. I'm always wondering, how do you deal with failure?
That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that. How do I deal with failure? It depends what I've failed in. If it's something I've dedicated a lot of time to, I will get pissed. I will break things. You can look at my phone. All of the cracking on it, there's spider webbing in the glass. The screen has literally popped out of the case of the phone because the back is bent. I throw that thing so much. And that's what happens if I work on something for a long time and it fails. I get very mad. And then I'll just quiet down and say, okay, what can I learn from this? And then I'll go back and try again. If it's something I've not dedicated a ton of time to, then I'll just, okay, that's ruined my day, but I'm not going to get too upset about it.
So
I don't deal with failure well is the answer.
Fair. But I mean, I think the most important thing, beyond the label of dealing with it well or poorly is the lesson you learn from it, right?
Yes, yes. And then being able to reapply that lesson in the future on an instant's notice.
Yeah, it's super valuable. Super valuable. Right. What? Sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit. How does your ability to be active affect your mental health? Like, I know for me personally, if I spend a lot of time doing nothing, I just feel terrible. I get very depressed. I do nothing, and it kind of spirals. And I know for a lot of people, they can just not be active for like months and be fine.
Frankly, I think I have relatively good mental health, and I think like activity, so climbing is the only activity I do, can both play positively and negatively in that. So, for example, if I'm struggling on a climb that I think I should be able to do fairly easily, I go a little bit ballistic inside. And if I'm doing well on climbs and performing better than I expect, then that's wonderful. That absolutely makes my day, almost no matter what else has happened earlier in the day. So it really depends on how well I'm doing on that particular day. Overall, I think activity is a good outlet for anyone.
Activity is great, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting. So have you had periods of inactivity, and does that affect you?
Yeah, not really in memorable history.
Huh.
I've been rock climbing relatively consistently for the last 5 or so years at the Hive. Before that, I had a 2-year hiatus, as my parents were taking the family and traveling a lot. And then before that hiatus, I climbed again when I was 9 in New York. And I don't really remember much of that 2-year hiatus period. I only remember not so much my need to exercise or lack of need to exercise, just things that we were doing, like traveling, which maybe in and of itself is enough of a mental change to make up for that lack of exercise.
True.
But yeah, I don't think the lack of exercise affects me too negatively. I have had, actually, I did take a break when I broke my ankle about a year ago, and I wasn't badly affected, honestly.
Huh.
Yeah, I was completely inactive, and the only thing that sort of depressed me about that period, I went off keto. I'd been on keto for a few months, and I had to go off when I broke my foot. I just didn't want to deal with all of that at the same time. But yeah, I got through it fine without exercise.
That's good to hear. How's your ankle doing? It's been a year, right?
Well, yeah, it clicks a lot.
Yeah?
I think it's a soft tissue issue, but it doesn't actually hurt or anything, so I just leave it be. I don't care if it clicks as long as it doesn't hurt. It's actually, ironically, the other foot that is becoming the issue now. My chiropractor thinks that because I was limping onto my left foot because my right foot was broken, that is what has caused this delayed issue in my left foot. So there's no individual incident that caused issues there. But yeah, anyway, right foot is doing well. Left foot is supposed to be my good foot. It's betrayed me.
Fair. Actually, funny, that kind of happened to me recently. I tore my quad, and then a month later, I started getting this nerve pain in my other leg because I was compensating with it. But it's been getting better, slowly but surely. But yeah, injuries suck. It always sucks. But that's interesting. I found most people I know who are very dedicated to a sport get like very out of it when they can't climb. So it's an interesting answer. I wasn't really expecting that. Right. Are you a student?
Yes. Grade 12.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Do you know what you want to go into after high school?
Oh, what I tell my parents is they'll go to UBC and study physics, and then move on to medicine. Go to the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, which is a medical school, after getting a degree in physics at UBC, and then become a cardiothoracic surgeon, which is what I wanted to do for a long time. I wanted to have a degree in physics, and I wanted to become specifically a cardiothoracic surgeon. And I still don't mind that outcome. But what I want to do now is just ditch school after high school and focus entirely on my business. And hopefully founding other businesses as well. In the very long term, it sounds like the dream of a literal 5-year-old. And this is the dream that I had when I was a literal 5-year-old. I'd like to go into tech, though, and become a tech entrepreneur.
You want to be a Silicon Valley driving your Lambo in the hills?
Oh, no, not a Lamborghini. My goodness, you offend me. A Porsche, of course.
Ah, man of class, I see. Porsches are fun.
They are very nice.
Absolutely. I had a bore in one once.
You borrowed one?
No, I was like 16, but I would just drive in a Porsche with my someone in my family, and we hit a wild boar.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
What's funny is the boar did better than the Porsche. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But no, I like Porsches. They're beautiful cars.
They are amazing, gorgeous.
That's interesting. Business is cool. I like business, but I don't think I have it in my brain to do that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that once I am in that stage out of school, I'll have the motivation and the courage, I suppose, to just go at it and do business.
Well, the thing, you can always do a gap year. Like your high school transcript isn't going to disappear. You don't have to go directly into it. You could spend like 2-3 years doing it, and then if like it doesn't work out for you, you put your time into your dream.
Yeah,
you can go to school. Keep going.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's options. Actually, I really want to interview my boss. He's a super good businessman. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm going to do it once my basement is renovated. Mm-hmm. For the people that don't know, this is my attic space. It's a big mess. It's terrible.
It's moderately bad. It's not awful.
I mean, it's functional.
It's functional. That's what matters.
That's what counts. But yeah, no, I'm keen. There'll be a new space soon. We're actually coming up to my last question. We've been rolling for a bit over an hour.
Oh my!
Which is actually pretty short for one of my podcasts, frankly. But it's been really good.
If you have anything else on the top of your mind, by all means, spew it at me.
Of course. I guess I'm wondering, what would you say to someone who is thinking to do a hobby or is binge watching YouTube videos of something they think is interesting, or they have this idea but they haven't done it? What do you do? What do you say?
Do some research. See what it's like to do that thing. See if you can find a YouTube video or person to explain to you what it is actually like to do that thing and to be successful or to fail, how often you might expect to fail or succeed, and try to match that hobby with your interests. And yeah, if you are interested, then my strategy, it might be expensive depending on what hobby you're looking at, but it's just trial and error. If it's watchmaking, for example, get your hands on a cheap broken watch on eBay. You can find a really cheap one. I got one of mine for $6, including shipping. So you can find them really cheap. And just take it apart. And just try the hobby out. See if you like it. If it's something more expensive, like, for example, piano, having to buy an actual piano and take lessons maybe, see if you can just maybe learn a little bit on your own and maybe find a piano at a piano shop or something and ask if you can just doodle on it for a little while. See what it's like. Again, just trial and error is the method I use. If you're not planning on sticking with the hobby for a long time, that might be very expensive for you, but I think I would recommend it, although you might want to do a little bit more research than I do first.
I mean, it hasn't done you too poorly, right?
No, I suppose not, but might as well play it on the safe side.
That's true. This is for the average Joe. I don't know how many average Joes watch my podcast. It's just like people I know, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough.
And a bunch of skateboarders for some reason. I don't know why I'm joking. But skateboarders. I interviewed a bunch of longboarders, and now there's a bunch of longboarders that follow me who I don't know, and it's really weird. You're weird.
Hello, weird people.
Just kidding. I love you all. Please don't leave. I think that's all the questions. Oh no, I did have one more question for you, Quinn. I did have one more question for you.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any role models?
Not really role models. I mean, I suppose I'm inspired by Elon Musk's ability to just go at a project with all of his might, make it succeed, and then just be able to give it up and move on to the next thing once the idea is out there and well-founded. I respect that and admire that. I'm not sure if I would consider that a role model per se, but yeah, there are people that I suppose I look up to.
Yeah, I think we gotta have people to like look at, and even if it's like, oh, I think Elon Musk's business ethics is great, but would I want to have his personal life? Maybe not.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you gotta take the good, leave the bad. That's why it's inspiration, not imitation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Elon's a funny dude.
Yeah, is a very funny dude.
Strange fella, but I don't know. I think that's the questions.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
It's been so fun, honestly. And make sure if you're watching this, check out Quinn's content. We did an episode together. You can hear me ramble about drug use, which is something I think is pretty interesting. Drugs are pretty cool, but
it was a very interesting episode.
Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. No, please don't do drugs.
I mean, anyway, I want to say thanks. There's a lot of people I like to say thank you to, so thank you. Thank you for coming out here. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time. I appreciate you letting me pick your brain, chatting about what you're into. I think it's awesome. I want to say thank you to whoever is watching or listening to this. You're crazy. Why? But also thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been amazing, the support I've received, and the people that have watched this. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. I want to say thank you to Reiner again, which I already did, but I'm going to do it again because he's helped me out a lot. He gave me the backdrop. He's taught me how to do all the lighting, taught me how to do the audio. Literally everything I know is just like, this is how you do it. I'm like, thanks. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to my dad who helped me get some of the gear. Thanks to my friend Noah for letting me use his editing software, which is now expired. Noah, please update it. Thank you to my friend Sam Mitchell for helping me with the theme music, helping me making the theme music. So thank you, dude. Thank you to my friend Eldritch who made my banner and my cover art. It's because of you that I have an image on the internet, which is weird to me. I don't like being perceived. And big thank you to my mother, who is my only sponsor. Shout out if there's sponsors out there. I love money. Money me now, please. But yeah, Mom, thanks. I appreciate it. Can I get a little round of applause for mothers?
Mothers.
Woo! All right, that's the show. Love you all. Thank you. Mwah.
Bye.